Hello everyone, my name is Adrian Swinski and today I will be talking about Abu Ghraib. It was one of the world's most notorious prisons, with torture, executions, and horrible living conditions under the reign of Saddam Hussein. According to the New Yorker, about 50,000 men and women would be jammed into cells. With the end of the reign of Saddam Hussein, Abu Ghraib was rebuilt to become a U.S. military prison. Its cruel history continued with civilians being dropped off between random military sweeps and highway checkpoints. These civilians would be categorized under common criminals, detainees suspected of crimes against the coalition, and some that were suspected to be leaders of the insurgency. According to the report by the Red Cross, about 70 to 90% of prisoners were mistakenly detained. General Karpinski was an experienced operations and intelligence officer, but had never ran a prison system. She became in charge of 3 large jails, 8 battalions, and 3,400 Army reservists. Most of them, just like her, had no training in handling prisoners. Despite this, she was enthusiastic about her new job. In an interview with the St. Petersburg Times, she said that for many of the Iraqi inmates at Abu Ghraib, living conditions now are better in prison than at home. At one point, we were concerned that they wouldn't want to leave. A month later, she was formally admonished and suspended. Without a major investigation into the Army's prison system was authorized by Lieutenant General Cordova Sanchez, who was a senior commander in Iraq. The New Yorker obtained a report written by Major General Antonio M. Taguba that was not meant for public release. The report details systematic and illegal abuse of detainees. These were perpetrated by soldiers of the 372nd Military Police Company and also by members of the American intelligence community. The report listed details such as breaking chemical lights and pouring the phosphoric liquid on detainees, pouring cold water on naked detainees, beating detainees with a broom handle and a chair, threatening male detainees with rape, allowing a military police guard to stitch the wound of a detainee who was injured after being slammed against the wall in his cell, sodomizing a detainee with a chemical light and perhaps a broomstick, and using military dogs to frighten and intimidate detainees with threats of attack, with one instance of a detainee having been bitten. The scandal was covered by ABC, where they would showcase photographs and George W. Bush's stance on the matter.
President Bush said today that he was disgusted by pictures of Iraqi prisoners being abused by American soldiers. 6 soldiers now face the possibility of a court-martial, and a brigadier general is under investigation. Many Americans will be disgusted by what they see, and the damage to U.S. interests in the rest of the world is hard to calculate, but it will be significant. Here's ABC's Martha Raditz.
The photographs were taken by the soldiers themselves. First aired on CBS 60 Minutes 2, they are disturbing and explicit. The Iraqi prisoners were hooded, stripped naked, forced into sexually explicit poses or human pyramids. And there are the American soldiers, male and female, smiling, pointing, humiliating the prisoners.
I shared a deep disgust that those prisoners were treated the way they were treated. Their treatment does not reflect the nature of the American people.
The 6 reservists, 2 women and 4 men, are charged with maltreatment and indecent acts for ordering detainees to publicly masturbate, battery for shoving and stepping on detainees. 2 of the soldiers are charged with striking detainees with enough force to cause serious injury. Staff Sergeant Ivan Frederick is one of those charged. He is 38 years old with 20 years of military service. His lawyer says Frederick thought he was doing what interrogators wanted him to do.
These young people were being told by persons in positions of power to soften up these prisoners, to advance the American cause, and that's what they did.
The military says that does not excuse the soldiers' behavior.
We're absolutely appalled by what we saw.
In the meantime, America's reputation, already battered, has suffered even more. Arab TV labeled the acts atrocities. Headlines around the world screamed torture. The photographs were shot at the Abu Ghraib prison, where Saddam Hussein subjected prisoners to hideous torture.
These pictures are reprehensible, abhorrent, and unbelievable. I, for one, stood against Saddam Hussein because of acts like this. You know, this really reminds me of what Saddam used to do.
And Peter, the soldier's commanding officer, the brigadier general you mentioned, has been suspended from duty, but she does not face criminal charges.
Many thanks, Martha. Martha Raddatz at the Pentagon.
With the news of these atrocities spreading internationally, former President George W. Bush also responded to the initial pictures with, "Under the dictator, prisons like Abu Ghraib were symbols of death and torture. The same prison became a symbol of disgraceful conduct by a few American troops who dishonored our country and disregarded our values." According to Mahal Halal, once a writer for the Al Jazeera media network, Bush's statement underlined the particular logic of the war on terror that continues to justify abuses to the present. Moral equivalences and the U.S.'s perceived moral superiority of itself in the way it fights war. The difference between torture under Saddam and, as Bush would put it, disgraceful conduct was that our mistake was lesser. 6 suspects face prosecution in Iraq on charges that included conspiracy, dereliction of duty, cruelty, maltreatment, assault, and indecent acts. The abuses became public due to specialist Joseph M. Darby's outrage. Some had been excused after exercising their Fifth Amendment right. Others were deemed too far away from the courtroom. After the hearing, the presiding investigative officer ruled that there was sufficient evidence to convene a court-martial against Frederick. In letters and emails, Frederick repeatedly noted that the military intelligence teams, which included CIA officers, linguists, interrogation specialists from private defense contractors, were the authoritative force inside Abu Ghraib. According to Frederick's letters, I questioned some of the things that I saw, such things as leaving inmates in their cell with no clothes or in female underpants, handcuffing them to the door of their cell, and the answer I got was, this is how military intelligence wants it done. They also had instructed us to place a prisoner in an isolation cell with little or no clothes, no toilet or running water, no ventilation or window, for as much as 3 days. Military intelligence officers have even encouraged them and told them they were getting positive results and information. The Criminal Investigation Command had been present when military dogs were used to intimidate prisoners at the request of people within military intelligence. At one point, Frederick told his family he pulled aside his superior officer, Lieutenant Colonel Jerry Philbaum, and asked about the mistreatment of prisoners. His reply was, "Don't worry about it." Interrogating prisoners and getting intelligence, including intimidation and torture, was a priority. According to Willie J. Rowell, who served for 36 years as a CID agent, said that the mistreatment at Abu Ghraib may have done little to further American intelligence. "They'll tell you what you want to hear, truth or no truth," Rowell said. "You can flog me until I tell you what I know you want me to say. You don't get righteous information." The scandal is important because it is another example of how people of authority have abused their power to achieve a goal with unethical methods that had violated the human rights of many people. The amounts of collective wrongdoing and failure to follow Army regulations in the Geneva Conventions were routinely shown in Army leadership at the highest levels. Even with our potential enemies, this event reminds us that it's not an excuse to act like monsters, but to conduct ourselves with procedure.